Hidden within the foliage, you see a shadow move and a branch rustle. The figure moves faster than you can keep track of in the dark, and all of a sudden you're knocked to the ground. You roll over and come face to face with your attacker, and you see. Wait, why does she have crossed eyes? And her fur looks yellow, not golden. And she. Unfortunately, guys, we're going to paint some minis that we're not super proud of sometimes, and that there is just the sad truth. Sometimes we just struggle to bring our vision to life, and sometimes it actually turns out that our vision for the mini was just flawed the whole time. Now, I thought I was above this, but apparently not. Nah, I'm just kidding. I paint heaps of minis that I'm not super happy with, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So this week I painted this character for my D&D campaign. She is a Leonin bounty hunter kind of character that works for an evil group of artificers, but we actually aren't going to look into her story at all today, really. Instead, I want to talk to you about what I think I did wrong with this mini and what lessons I can learn from having painted her. So, let's get into it. So, the first thing that I think I did wrong with this mini is actually more about what I didn't do, and that is as simple as having a plan. I went into the painting process knowing two things about her appearance: that she had golden hair and that her armor and weapons would be silver. But beyond that, I was just making it up as I went. Now, I've been on and off painting for about 7 years or so now. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I've seen a good handful of mates get into the hobby too, and from what I can tell, this is consistently something that a lot of us painters struggle with. Now, I've got some ideas for how I'm going to start planning paint jobs in the future, but I'll come back to that in a little bit. Now, something I think you're going to notice as you watch the time lapse in the background is that a lot of the mini just seems to blend together. And I believe that this can largely be attributed to the brightness of different sections. Immediately, the cloak and armor, while they're different colors, they're very similar in brightness, and there is just no contrast between them. Even when they're viewed at just a little bit of a distance, the two sections just merge together. Now, you'll see that I try to salvage this by applying a shade to the armor, and also I will come back to the cloak a fair few times to try and fix it. Eventually, I found that making the cloak a bit more blue provided the contrast that the model desperately needed, but still, there's a lot of room for improvement there. So, with the cloak, brightness was just one of the issues I encountered. Even now that the model is done, I still think there's a lot of room for improvement with it. The cloak covers the back half of the model, so statistically, you're probably going to be looking at it half the time when it's on the table. And unfortunately, there's just not much going on with it at all. It's not a focal point whatsoever. I highlighted the folds a bit and then applied a watered down blue grey paint, which quite frankly saved it from being outright bad. But really, I think I should have pushed the shadows darker and the highlights brighter. And also, usually with large cloth surfaces, especially, they can really benefit from these exaggerated contrasts. Since the surface has a lot less details than other parts of the mini, they're actually usually viewed from a distance, so that exaggerated contrast really shines there. I think that her hair and fur is probably what I could have improved upon the most, which is probably how it should be, honestly, because this was my first real attempt at painting fur. So I think the blonde looks all right, but it's by far the brightest thing on the mini. All attention is flung there, and unfortunately, it just doesn't hold up. Her face is the same as her hair, and so instead of the focal point being where it should be on her face, it's instead brought to the top and the back of her head. Now, to improve upon this, I reckon I could have used a lot less saturated of a yellow and brought a lot more brightness to her eyes and muzzle, and also pushed some of the highlights on her face a lot further. Now, faces are notoriously hard to paint as there are so many fine details and everything's so small, but it's something that I'd really like to improve upon as I think they really add so much to the character when they're done well. So while those are the big things I think that I could have improved upon, there's also a few other details I could have added or just worked harder on to really level up this mini. So first off is the base. It is just way too clean and I was so lazy with it. It tells no story whatsoever, which is something I think I really want to start doing with bases. So for this character, I could have included insignia for the faction she works for, some Aether Stone technology, and maybe even something a bit bloody, as that fits for her character and would provide just a nice little bit of colour. These are pretty small details, but I could pretty easily 3D print them or maybe even cut them out of foam or something. I also think I could have varied the fur a bit more and just put more effort into it. I was getting really sick of coming back time and time again to different parts on this mini, and so by the time I was touching up the fur, I was pretty over it. I would have really liked for her hair to look a bit more gold rather than blonde, which I've got no idea how to do right now, but I'm sure that there are some videos out there that could help me with it. And I think also the last notable thing that could be improved upon are her weapons and armor. This is, after all, meant to be a significant character on the table. She is not just some grunt that is summoned by the boss. She's a recurring NPC that, depending on how the story goes in my campaign, could very likely be a boss one day, or, in a pretty crazy situation, could potentially end up being an ally. She deserves some much cooler looking and more memorable weapons. So, more effort into that would be great as well. So I've gone through a few of the specific ways that I think I could improve this mini, but I want to think more about what I'm going to do for all minis going forward, which is about making a plan. The way I think I'm going to do this, or at least I'm going to give it a go, and I'll let you know how it goes for me. I want to be making a priorities list. So figuring out essentially what I should be putting the most effort into. So, for example, this mini, I think it should be her face, fur, and cloak. They should be the highest priorities, with her face probably being the highest there. And these pieces, these parts of the mini would demand more detail, more contrast, and just more effort in general. And then on the priorities list, it would be followed by her weapons, armor, and then her base, and then everything else after that. And I think that if I'm able to effectively do this, the priorities list that I have should essentially tell the viewer where to look and where the focal points are. Overall, though, I don't think this is a bad mini, and I don't think I actually did anything particularly horrible to ruin it or anything. Instead, I think I made a series of small decisions that led me to painting a mini that just had a lot more room for improvement than I would have liked. That being said, it's given me a nice opportunity to really think about how I could better my painting, which I think comes down to these 4 points. I need to establish a focal point early on and really start planning my paints. I need to highlight more aggressively. I have been very afraid of that in the past. I need to vary brightness more across different sections and materials to really distinguish them from each other. And I just need to have some more fun with my bases and really get stuck into that. No more laziness. If you've got any other ideas, though, on how I could improve this mini or any other tips for an intermediate painter, I would love it if you could let me know in the comments. Anyway, guys, it looks like story time's all done for the week. Thanks for tuning in, legends, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.